Yeah.
Yeah. Now, often he'll do some of these really deep emptiness teachings, which is very hard to wrestle with for most people. And he'll say, okay, we'll go back to compassion and kindness later. We'll take a break. We'll just dig at this for a little while.
Yeah, it's amazing what turns you onto it. My first summer retreat was all about death. All of it.
Oh, yeah.
And that got me. Big time.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things that is in the third turning of the wheel is something called there's a Buddhist. His name was Jonangpa, and in Tibet at the time of Tsongkhapa, who wrote the text that we're taking most of this material from, he was proposing some things and they contradict each other. So we'll look at that. His viewpoint proposed by him and his followers had two things. One was that when the Buddha spoke the third turning of the wheel, he was speaking literally. Say, okay, we can go with that. The mind-only school says that, so sure. That's not radical in that sense. And then he also said emptiness is a positive thing. It's a thing. I don't know this. Like a ball or something. Now, in the teachings, the Buddha said that emptiness is like empty space. And empty space is used as an example for a lot of things. And it's a little tricky because we think, or generally would tend to think, that where this laptop is right now, there's no empty space. It's filled with the laptop. But when we say empty space, we're talking about something that actually doesn't go away. It's filled with the laptop, and then when we take the laptop away, that's the space we're talking about when we say that empty space. So it's not empty space anymore. It's still the thing that we're talking about. The laptop is in it right now, that portion of it. Does that make sense? You got to cook a lot of this, but so, for example, if I'm talking about a space generally right around here, say, oh, the pen is in it right now. That's the space I'm talking about. Okay, the pen's not in it now, but that's the space I'm talking about. Now the pen's back in that space. That's the empty space we're talking about. And the definition of empty space is the lack of a physical obstruction. So you go, well, if it's the place you're talking about where the pen is right now, well, that can't be empty space because the pen's there. But then the way we're talking about it is, if it had a physical obstruction, then how could the pen be there? Okay, so the pen can't be in a place that has a physical obstruction, can it? Because it's not going to go where my laptop is, but it can go here. So that's the quality, that's the idea we're talking about when we say empty space.
I like the idea of a parking space.
Yeah.
The parking space is still there even when there's a car.
Right. Yeah, that's a modern way. That's a modern way of defining it and being very specific. And so the lack of something, a simple emptiness, is what we're talking about. And emptiness is the simple lack of something that's self-existently, depending on your school, the pen, or the thing that the mental construct pen applies to. Okay? It doesn't automatically apply to that, depending. So you got to wrestle with that a little bit. And so this person put forth the idea that emptiness is a thing, and then there's lots of different people teach lots of different things about emptiness. It's and this one's a little bit slipperier, but like the true nature of your mind. You could debate that one. But your mind is a thing. So that one you have to dig a little deeper with. But sometimes some people say it's like this green light, or it's a yellow light, or a blue light, or there's all kinds of things that they will say it is. It's different than when you say, well, I can't describe it, it's kind of like, but it's not. There are people who say, this is what it is. And they don't say it's the lack of a pen nature to the pen. That, they don't say that, so they're ascribing some positive thing. So this person that we're covering here at the moment was saying two things. Lord Buddha spoke literally in the third turning of the wheel, and in the third turning of the wheel he said, emptiness, this important goal we're trying to understand, is just like empty space. He didn't say it is empty space, okay, so don't get confused there. He said it's like that, in that it's just a simple lack of something. In the Tibetan, this is another time, I'll just throw it out there. The Tibetan sometimes is helpful. You learn terms like megak and mayingak. Megak is a simple lack of something. A mayingak is something that's implied, like the fat, chubby, the chubby monk who never eats after noontime. What did your mind automatically fill in?
Food.
Food, when? To the chubby monk?
After or before.
Before, there you go, see? Yeah, that's a mayingak. That's an implied, absence there, or, because I said that's an absence, he doesn't eat after noontime. Okay, that's an emptiness, it's a lack of, not an emptiness, it's an absence, it's a lack of something. Lack of eating after noontime. That's a simple absence. The chubby monk who never eats after noontime. Well, immediately we're like, well, he eats before noontime then, doesn't he? He's gaining weight, he must be eating before noontime. Okay, that's sort of a classic example. So a simple lack of something is what we're talking about. And the Buddha said that it's like empty space, it's a lack of something. And then this it's not a school, but this group would say that it's like emptiness is a positive thing. It is this positive thing that you can go out and find. And in Buddhism, part of what we're doing is we're trying to see what it would be like if it existed and go look for it and not find it. Because emptiness is a lack of something. A lack of nature to this pen. See, if the cylinder has the lack of penness to it, where's the pen coming from? It's coming from me. So if it's coming from me, the pen is empty of pen. Or the cylinders, I keep saying pen. The cylinder, this thing, I heard an interesting way of talking about it. I found an actual modern scientific study that talked about how basically the perceiver of a stimulus, so we'll call this the stimulus, plays a role in what they see.
Mm-hmm.
They've proven this. Ooh, okay. With scientific studies.
The Heisenberg principle.
Oh no, that's a different one. This is a different take on it. It's a psychological piece of it as opposed to the very science and
Yeah.
that. This is another one that just was done within the last year, I think.
Well, how the heck did they measure that one then?
Oh, it's quote valid scientific research with controls and it's statistical and it's very interesting. So they're saying that, and that's where I got the word stimulus. Like, oh yeah, it's called stimulus. So this stimulus is exuding pen or I'm seeing pen. Where's it coming from? It's coming from me. And so the lack of the pen coming from the stimulus is the emptiness. It's a lack of. So we have to understand that, I see pen, I see water bottle, I see laptop, I see phone coming at me. That's our habit. And we have to start to struggle with this daily in meditation even. Just thinking about it over and over again. And then you start seeing it like someone walking by the counter at the hardware store and you go, oh look, paperweights. No, key rings. No, paperweights. And you start saying, oh, okay. And then you begin to see the emptiness of the object at the same time. Oh, it's a paperweight, or it's a keyring. See, I just said paperweight. I didn't mean to say that. I was actually thinking, I saw the image in my mind of a keyring and said paperweight. So you start playing with these things. And then you get a deeper understanding. You start to see subtle shifts that, oh, okay, it isn't coming at me. And you remind yourself of that over and over and over again. And then, when the person cuts you off in traffic, it's not the self-existently annoying person. By definition, they're annoying. They cut me off. That makes them annoying. They are annoying from their own side, coming at me. Oh no, I'm seeing them as annoying. Someone else might have seen them as a person having an emergency and trouble and trying to get off the exit real quickly because it's the hospital exit and they were, trying to get their wife. They didn't realize it. And just to assume that, somebody else might think, what a jerk. And we don't actually know either unless we follow them and go, oh, geez, look, he brought his pregnant wife into the emergency room. So what's easier and happier to live with?
Accepting.
Just say, well, they cut me off. Or they slid in with a little bit less space than would be generally comfortable, but and you start to peel away at why did I get so angry at them? I got angry because I've been angry to other people and I've planted that seed to see angry people coming back at me. That's the ultimate question is, why do I see a pen? Not coming this way, but this way. Why do I see a pen? Sometimes we say project the idea of a pen. It's a projection. It's forced on the stimulus. Why? Because I'm not a dog, I don't see it as a chew toy. I'm a human, I see it as a pen because I can write with it, I have those habits. I've planted those seeds. And so then that becomes the other part of it. The more you understand that, the more you start seeing, oh, well, how do I plant those seeds? To see what I want to see. And anyway, so it couldn't be both. So, I don't know. I had that in my notes, so we'll just do that one. It gives us a little chance to play with a little logic and go, oh, okay, well, it can't be both. And so, oh, okay, so you go, wow, I just disputed Joe Numba's viewpoint. And you're like, yeah, that was easy.
I just had an interesting thought. Looking at emptiness and empty space, it ran through my mind, the phrase, nature abhors a vacuum.
Yeah.
So the mind abhors a vacuum of emptiness. The mind doesn't want something to be empty. It always wants to label it or qualify it or something like that. So it's kind of an interesting idea. That's what, that's our mind's constantly abhorring a vacuum.
Yeah, you could, and so here we'll go back to the very beginning where you talked about the paths. And so then you look at something, you go, well, okay. Our tendency is to take an idea and go, oh, that's interesting. Like I do this a lot with people that say things to me. I used to get these things emailed to me all the time, and then they stopped emailing them to me because I would just write back, sort of. To me, they're just hallmark ideas. You see a lot that God said, or God doesn't do this, or the Bible said this, and if you look them up, they're not actually in the Bible. It's not anything God ever said that I know of. No, we have no authority that maybe He said it. So then you go, well, is this literal or figurative? Did He literally say that? We don't have any authority that said I was at such and such place and God spoke to me. So we don't have an authority. Then you got to apply either my own experience. I didn't hear Him say it. Not surprising. Haven't had very many conversations with God directly. So, or ancient Buddhist wise sayers. So I can't use that. And then it comes down to logic. And you go, well, does that make sense? Well, then you got to roll out, okay, well, I generally tend to think that the Bible at some level is an authority for people who are being Christian. And the Bible says this, and does this match? Or does it match my experience that this is true? God only gives you what you can handle. Well, my first response would be, what about all the people who... So you're saying they could handle having both their limbs blown off by a mine when they stepped on it, and having their family just let them waste away in a nursing home and then they killed themselves. If that's, quote, handling it, then yeah, okay, I'll buy that. But if that's not your definition of handling it, then your statement's not true. So we can't call it a true statement. So maybe some people handle things they get and some people don't. Then you got to go, okay, what's behind that? And you got to roll it back. So let's look at the one about nature abhorring a vacuum and your mind abhorring a vacuum. Is it useful? At one level, you go, okay, yeah, okay, I'm trying to label things. So at least a figurative level, we could say she's saying that we label everything. And does that match the teachings I've heard? Does that match my experience? Is there anything I don't label? And there's a phrase in Buddhism, name and term. And we tend to think of that as, oh, it's called a pen, or in French, la plume, or in Spanish, I don't know, something. That is not the name that we mean, because then we would be saying dogs either have language, if we could throw them out as saying they're not sentient beings, they don't have a mind, but we wouldn't do that. So, or they have a language they don't understand, or babies, before they learn verbalizations, even in their mind, they don't learn them. We're talking about the images that we use, the kuntaks, the labels. That can be a label. At that level, we're talking about labels. So everything is labeled. So we are labeling everything. That's how we see our world.
But that's a good point. It's, I think label, I think word, but it doesn't have to be, right? It can be the image.
Yeah.
The kundak.
Yeah. So does that mean that it's not useful because we're doing that all the time? At a level of, we don't ever engage, I don't say don't ever, but generally, we don't engage with a person they're making sounds, they're making gestures, and I'm hearing the sounds and I'm seeing light bounce off of them. We label them, what an asshole, what a jerk, he's annoying, he's pushy, she's so shy. We don't say she's just sitting there literally moving her thumbs around in a circle and no one's talking to her. We say she's shy. So at that level, we do tend to label people, but that's a different label, a different level of labeling. We're applying constructs to people all the time, or not just people, but things, everything. And what we're trying to get to is a point where we're not labeling with conscious, contrived thought, an idea, an absence. So I'm looking at the pen going, it's a pen. Yeah, but not everyone sees it as a pen. It's not a pen. So if it weren't a pen, if I didn't see it as a pen, what would it be? Wrestling with those ideas. And looking for the pen that's there all by itself, that everyone would see as a pen. And we come up empty, and we'll go, well, okay, yeah, I know, a dog would see it as a chew toy. But, understanding that really deeply, that's what we're wrestling with, that's what we're looking for. We're looking for the thing that we think is there, the label that we typically apply, and we're trying to strip that away, or not strip it away, but actually look for it and grasp it, and then realize that it doesn't apply to the object automatically. That's the emptiness we're looking for. Oh, it's not that from its own side. It doesn't have any qualities of its own. I'm applying those labels, those qualities. Okay. So here's another way of putting it. In the third turning of the wheel, Buddha said dependent things. So we're not talking about constructs. Those are the kuntaks, the idea. And we're not talking about the lack of those constructs being there all by themselves. That's the emptiness. So the kuntak, or the... so we're looking at the shenlong, the thing, the changing thing. So we'll use the pen. The things that you imagine as the changing thing, that you think about as being a pen. So those things that get imagined as a changing thing that are thought of about as being a pen. and those things that change that function as a pen. So there are three ways of thinking about it. So we'll say that again. Those things that you imagine as a changing thing. So you think of this as being a pen. I'll put it in quotes, pen. Those things that get imagined as a changing thing that are thought about as being a pen. So there's like another layer that gets labeled. And those things that change, that function as a pen. So this is, you can see, very close to, there's another set of teachings called Chichedra, which is Tibetan for quality and characteristic. It's the way we organize the things that we think about. And that is one of the most important teachings. Well, there's lots of most important teachings, but it's one of the linchpins that allows you to understand the way your mind is functioning, so that when you get, pen or chew toy, you start to see and apply it to other places. And then the more you understand that one, the more you start to say, and I'm reading this, Chichedra, same thing. Pieces of it. It's like a puzzle. It's like a puzzle, and you start to see, I see how these fit together. And it's not that they exist by themselves as a separate puzzle, for a separate thing. You start to see, it's all the same puzzle. And then you have somebody who has this experience that we're trying to achieve, and they say, all spiritual paths lead to the same place. It's all the same. I know Lama Marin, I think Geshe Michael, they both say the same thing. It's in different ways. It's Lama Marin likens it to cereal. There's like 3 kinds of cereal, and then everything else is just different packaging. Or sometimes they'll say, we all work for the same company. It's just different brand differentiation. It's interesting. The other day I was looking at a shipping box for a particular brand of smoke detector, and I see them placed in a store. There's this brand and this brand. I'm thinking, I wonder which one's better. Then the box comes it's for fire extinguisher, and it's from this company, number 2, and I take out the fire extinguisher and it's company A. And I'm like, these 2 brands of fire extinguishers are both for the same company. It's like, should I get this brand or this brand? They're made by the same company. So they don't care which one you buy. You can say, this one's so much better. It's still the same company. So another way of saying that is, our goal is to get to the moon. And the moon is sometimes an analogy or metaphor for emptiness. So we're trying to understand emptiness. And so we're pointing at the moon. That's what I want to understand. And then somebody else points to the moon, and somebody else points to the moon. All different fingers pointing to the moon. It's still the same moon. And then, as Lama Marin says, then you get into little finger wars. My finger's better than your finger. And it's like they're fighting about which finger's better. It's not about the finger. It's not about the pointer. It's about what's being pointed at. So it's not about the path that you take. It's about the goal that you're trying to achieve. And then the path you're taking is just how you get there. So, and then that gets complicated too, but yeah. Okay. So another way of talking about the shenwang, the thing, the stimulus, we'll call it the stimulus. Another way of talking about the stimulus is it's the area in which you create, it's the field of play, the field where you create your image. It's what allows you to have the image. Geshe Michael had said, it's kind of like, what did he say? It was one of the New York, it was like Shea Stadium or something. It's like Shea Stadium, it's where you play the ball game. So the stimulus is where you create the idea pen. I mean, not literally like my mind's over there, but that's the arena in which you can apply that. So you wouldn't look at this and say pen. This is not an appropriate arena for pen at that level. So you say, okay. So I can see how very quickly you could fall back into, well, this is not an arena for pen, so it's clearly self-existently from its own side not a pen. So if it can't be a pen, that just would be silly, then it must be something of its own, and I just haven't figured out what it is. And this one, well, okay, we can use it as a pen, or yeah, I could see chew toy, and we wrestle with that, but we don't go deep enough and go down to the level where it's not something from its own side. It exists. This thing exists by definition in the mind-only school. It has a definition. It's just that the kuntak, the label, the pen or water bottle that I apply isn't there all by itself. And that's their idea of emptiness. And the middle way school idea of emptiness is this has no qualities from its own side. No qualities. So the mind-only school says, yeah, that's what the Buddha said in the second turning of the wheel, but he was just being figurative. See, he proved it in the third turning of the wheel when he said, and then we went through those things that he said and roll it out, and you go, oh, okay. But they leave out the fact that he never explained the changing things and applied those aspects to it. So that's why we have the two schools fighting, going, well, no, see, the third turning of the wheel proves that the second turning of the wheel was literal. Okay? So another way of saying this, and you can't hear the same thing over too many times, and you can't hear it too many different ways. And that's one of the things that the Buddha said. I think it was in the beginning of this sutra, when he said that, you know, they'll teach thousands of ways of understanding emptiness. And he didn't actually say thousands. I think he said 100, which is another way of saying countless. In Tibetan, one of the ways of saying countless is to say 100. And another way is to say 84,000. That's the Sanskrit way. In some of the texts they go, oh, you know, 84,000 mental afflictions. You have countless mental afflictions. The fact that this cushion isn't just right, that's just yet another mental affliction. It's just a distinction. Well, you can't just lump that into, you know. I mean, yeah, you can lump it all down into three things. Ignorance, not understanding that this pen isn't a pen from its own side. Wanting a pen and being willing to steal her pen because I need a pen right now. And thinking that that's how I'll get a pen. Ignorant desire. And ignorant dislike. I don't like this table. I wish I could get rid of it. You know, or something. Those are the three basic mental afflictions, the root ones. And everything can be categorized into that one way or another. Things we want to get rid of, things we want, and just ignorance. The ignorance which then says, because I want it, I will steal it, take it from somebody else, not understand where it comes from. And we do this all the time. We do it all the time. Even studying for a very long time. There was maybe I'll bring it to, I won't bring it to this class, but there's a little snowman thing we had at the store. And it was this funny little kind of like silly putty thing. You would make three little balls in a snowman, and it had a little carrot nose and top hat and arms, plastic arms. And you made the little snowman and you put him on a little tray, and then you let him sit there, and then he would melt slowly over time. And it was this cool little thing. And I looked at it and I thought, everybody was like, why did she buy these things? They're never going to sell. Nobody's going to buy these. They've been sitting around since Thanksgiving. Then all of a sudden they all disappeared. And there was one left, and I left work, and I thought, oh no. We went back to get one thing, and I said, oh yeah, that's right, I forgot. Okay, we dropped by on the way somewhere, and we had to pick up something, and I said, oh yeah, I'll get the snowman. I don't want to forget the snowman. I think there's only a couple left. And I walked in, because I was going to use it as an illustration of subtle impermanence. And I was like, oh, you make it there, and then you can like smush it, or you can just let it drip and slowly melt, and then you can just redo it. So, and I walked in, and there was one left, and there were two people in line. And one went over there and clearly didn't want it, and the other one was waiting. And I thought, I snatched it before she could get it. And I watched myself and said, oh. And they said, oh, did you want this? She goes, no, I don't want that. And I was like, whew, good, I got off the hook. But my instinct was to grab it before it went away. Forgetting that where does anything in our world come from? It's from planting the seeds by helping somebody else get what they want. And if she wanted it, and I took it, and said, well, I got it first, then that's not the right way to get it. And it's that misunderstanding. And so it was very interesting to watch myself do it. As soon as I walked in, I was like, oh, I'm just going to grab it. Before it's gone. It's the last one. I can't believe I didn't take it earlier. And I said to her, did you want that? And she said, no. I said, phew. But what if she had said yes? Would I have been upset? Or would I have been able to say, oh, look, another interesting teaching? But it was interesting to watch my mind fall back to that so quickly. Okay. All right. So here's an interesting little mathematical equation. Emptiness equals dependent things minus the constructs. You can do it as math. You can write it on the board. E, emptiness, equals D, dependent things, minus C, constructs. Or in Tibetan, Yongdrup equals Shenwang minus Kuntak. So, that'd be cool. All right. So then, we'll do one other interesting thing. I think this is all interesting, but there's one more. We want to touch on the idea of something called existence versus identity. And I'll throw out the Tibetan words just for the heck of it. In Tibetan, there's a word, may and you, two words, may and you. May is not, and you means it is. So you go, oh, okay, may you, I get it. Is not is. Pretty straightforward concept. Why it's important to just to know that there's Tibetan is different, because there's another one, min, which means is not, and yin, which means it is. So you got may you and min yin. You don't have to memorize the words, but it means is not and it is not and it is. You go, oh, well, just two different words for the same thing. But they mean different things, so we're going to look at that. So the first one, as an example, if I said, there's a Segway in that room over there, or is there a Segway? There isn't a Segway, any version of it. So you want to do the negative or the positive. And then you come to the conclusion in that room, the Segway is that little two-wheeled cart you can drive around on. If you go over there and you look and you say, oh, there's no Segway in there. So there is not a Segway in the other room. That's an issue of existence. It's not in there. That's the not there. Then the second one is when we could say there's nothing on the table. You say, no, there's something on the table. We can argue about that kind of existence. Yes, there's some, okay, we all agree there's something on the table. But now we have to argue about what's on the table, the identity of what's on the table. So we talked earlier about that thing coiled up in the corner that we couldn't see in the dark. We're not going to debate and disagree that there's something coiled up in the corner. There is something there. There's an existence of something in the corner. But now we can debate what's the identity of it. It's a rope. No, it's a snake. No, it's a scary thing. No, it's a bad thing. We should kill it. And misunderstanding flies in there. That's a different kind of understanding. And that's just another distinction. So remember, we also called the third turning of the wheel, the turning of the wheel of fine distinctions. It's saying, well, no, I didn't say nothing exists. I said some things do, some things don't, and mean it that way. So think about here's two phrases to think about. The fact that the pen is what we call pen from its own side doesn't exist. And the fact that the pen doesn't have any identity of having a construct related to it that exists by definition. Now, those are hard, aren't they? It's a lot of words. So that's why we just chip away at it. So I'll read those again. The fact that the pen is what we call pen from its own side doesn't exist. And you can apply this to your own life. It could be anything. It doesn't have to be pen. It could be angry boss. It could be annoying customer. It could be angry driver. The fact that that thing that we call that thing from its own side isn't that thing. Doesn't exist. And then the fact that the thing, the pen, doesn't have an identity of having a construct related to it that exists by definition. So, those are really hard. Those are just, a lot of this class was just things you got to think about. You go, I didn't make those distinctions before. And then you just have to be aware there's a distinction. That's the beginning of the path. And you go, there's a distinction there? And then you wrestle with that, and then you get more understanding, and then you apply the distinction, and you wrestle with it, and you go, does it apply here? Does it apply there?
Can you say that second one again?
Yeah. The fact that the pen doesn't have an identity of having a construct related to it that exists by definition. So that's why we did the identity versus existence. Is it something that exists? Are we arguing that it exists or not? So we could argue that this is not self-existently a pen. That's its identity. Oh, it's a pen. No, it's a chew toy. No, it's an angry boss. No, it's a nice person. It's a good boss. We could argue that. It's like we're not arguing that they don't exist. I can write with this. It works. It functions as a pen. So it exists. We're not arguing existence. We're arguing identity.
So are you saying that identity is the construct? I mean, did that last one?
What do you think?
Oh, that's what I'm playing with.
Yeah. Yeah. You have to,
The construct is the identity we give it, right?
we call it pen. Well, see, I can't answer that actually, because it's like I can't read your mind and I don't read everybody else's mind and I don't read mine, and from moment to moment, what do we do most of the time? It's a pen. It has its own ideas. It has its, not its own ideas. It has its own features from its own side, and then I'm applying that construct to it because it belongs to it.
Right.
Or am I just wandering around like most people do, just thinking it's just a pen? They spend 2 hours talking about it's a pen, it's not a pen. It's just ridiculous. Most people are self-existently goofy, wasting their time. And then somebody else goes, oh my gosh. There's an interesting story. When this course was first taught, one of the people, I don't know if at the time she was a nun, but she's a nun now. She was taking the class with Geshe Michael, and she worked at one of the Tibetan things, some Tibet thing. I don't know, not for Tibet, the country, but Tibet Fund, I think it was.
Tibet House in New York.
He said Tibet Fund, so I don't know if it was something else. And there was a monk who was in China, had been imprisoned by the Chinese for 30 years. 30 years. And he finally escaped with the torture implements that they were using against him. And he had no teeth, he had scars, all kinds of things that happened to him. And he came across this person, that's Ellie Jigme, and he called her Ellie, so I don't know if she was a nun yet. But then also another time he called her something else, but who knows. She was talking to this monk, and he said, oh, you're studying this? Oh my gosh, he got so excited. She showed him the text, and he's just flipping out, holding up to his head and dancing around going, this is amazing. He had memorized it, but he had never gotten the full teaching on it. He had never heard all the teaching. He was just so amazed that there were Americans having this teaching. He was just thrilled. It was just put it into perspective. I don't know what made me think of that actually. But
We were talking about identity and context.
Oh yeah. And just how, it got me onto, the reason I can't answer that question because everybody's different, and it's just, it's the rabbit hole we fall into where we go, oh well, and we answer the question thinking, well, it's self-existently there, and it's that way. There's so many more questions that are powerful than the answers more often. It's the question. We keep asking the questions. Once we find good questions, and go, oh, how am I seeing this? Am I understanding this? How, is this caused? Did I think this was caused, or did I think it was just out there randomly? And working with that. So, okay. So that's it for today. So once again, thank you so much for coming. I hope it was helpful. And